Welcome to Clued in Mystery. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Brooke, and we both love mystery.
Hi, Brooke.
Hi, Sarah. I'm so pleased that today we get the opportunity to visit with mystery and thriller author Catherine McKenzie.
This is going to be such a fun conversation because we'll talk about some of her books as well as, I hope, Please Join Us, which is one of the books that we did for our What Would You Do episode.
Yes.
So I'll start us off with a brief introduction to Catherine. Catherine Mack is the pseudonym for Catherine McKenzie, the USA Today and Globe and Mail best-selling author of over a dozen novels. Her books are approaching 2 million copies sold worldwide and have been translated into multiple languages, including French, German, Portuguese, and Polish. Television rights to Every Time I Go on Vacation, Someone Dies, and its forthcoming sequels sold in a major auction to Fox TV for development into a series, with Mack writing the pilot script. A dual Canadian and U.S. citizen, she splits her time between Canada and various warmer locations in the U.S. Welcome, Catherine.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, Catherine, before becoming an author, you practiced law for 20 years. What inspired your change to these more creative pursuits?
Well, I'd actually already started publishing 10 years before I stopped practicing law. So I was doing both for 10 years. And in the end, I had just sort of run my course with my law career. I didn't actually quit to write full time. I think I just had enough of living in other people's conflicts, which is I was a litigation lawyer, so it's just conflict. Sometimes resolution, but mostly conflict. Um, so yeah, that's how I ended up writing full time, and I've been lucky enough since I left my law career to still be getting book contracts and still be able to make my living that way.
That's great. I like that you said that, in your old job, it was all conflict. And Sarah and I talk about all the time that that's one of the draws to mystery fiction is there's always a good, complete ending, right? Justice is usually served and a
Right.
nice bow is put on it. And in real life, it's not always that way.
No, it's not always that way in real life. I mean, if you go to court, there is a resolution. There's a judgment. Most cases settle, and then both people are annoyed and then happy eventually that they didn't end up in court because they got to control their outcome. So it's different. Um, I think, and maybe we'll get here, but there are lots of lawyers who become writers, and I think actually the conflict is part of the reason, but maybe not for the reason you'd think. But
Well, let's talk about that a little bit because you're right. I was thinking about how many interviews we have had, Brooke, with people who are lawyers
Hmm.
or trained as lawyers, and we had another one just recently with Jacob Kerr, who was a lawyer and then just published his debut novel. It seems to be I don't know if it's a logical outlet,
right.
but it seems to be an outlet for a lot of people in the law profession.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think there's a bunch of different reasons that I've sort of formulated over the years. One, I think, most people who are lawyers are sort of highly motivated self-starters. So they're the type of person who won't just talk about writing a book, saying, I'm going to write one in retirement or whatever. They'll actually do it. And then once they'll do it, they're actually, have enough confidence to move forward with trying to get it published. So that, like right there, that's, you're narrowing down, the pool there, I think. And then I think also a lot of law is writing, like especially in litigation. Every piece of litigation starts with a recitation of the facts, and it is storytelling. And it is how you frame the facts, and you can't make things up, but it is still about people and characters and plot and personality and uncovering mysteries. So a lot of that is really applicable. The best lawyers are excellent writers. Um, and then the third thing, which is what I was alluding to before, is, you do have access to people in a way that most people don't. So when you're a lawyer, you're always meeting people in a point of crisis, and under stress. And that's not how we interact normally with people, right? Like, yes, maybe our close friends or family members, but like literally every interaction all day long with clients is people, like, when they come see you, it's the worst day of their life, right? They just got sued or they need to sue somebody, and then it never gets better from there. Like, no one's like, yay, I'm so happy to see my lawyer today. And my clients loved me, but still, um, so I think in terms of insight into what people will do and how people will act, um, and, I was always fond of saying that people think that, like, lawyers are liars and stuff. And I'm like, it's not the lawyers that are the liars. It's the clients, and, cause lawyers are not on the witness stand. And, it was definitely a shock for me when I first started practicing law to see, like, how quickly people are willing to massage, bend the truth when, there's real stakes involved. And so, yeah, I've just had access to, like, the worst of people for a really long time. And that does, not that I base any characters in my books on any client of mine or anything like that, but just having access to the way people behave in situations and be able to take that and then apply that to the situations I put my characters in, I think is really something that a lot of people just don't, therapists, I think, and there's lots of writers who are therapists and there's lots of writers who are medical doctors, I think, all for the same reason, because you're taking a group of, highly skilled, highly trained people, and then you're giving them access to stories. And then you put that together and they can come up with their own stories out of, the experience that they have of things that didn't happen to them. So that's my 50-cent version of why there's so many people in those kind of professions who end up writing books.
No, I think that's really fascinating. It's such a treat to speak to you because we did take that deep dive into your book. Please Join Us is a study on manipulation, white collar crime, and women supporting each other, sort of. And often in thrillers, Sarah and I have talked about a lot, and we see characters making really silly choices, and it's sometimes hard to really suspend your disbelief enough to get into the story, but you avoided that in this book. And many times we said that we felt like, oh, I could see that really happening. So how did you do that? And how did you approach making a story that felt realistic, but was still a thriller?
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think, what I'm always trying to do is explore the gray, because life is not black and white. And, people, like, even Mother Teresa had bad thoughts. There are people that Mother Teresa didn't like, right? And so, and writing books about good people is boring. So we don't do that. And I think, in particular with that book, I set out to write a book where everyone was a woman. So the good people, the villains, like, the men are the side characters in the book. And it was a very deliberate choice that I made, because while there's a lot of women-centered thrillers now, there wasn't 10 years ago, but there are a lot now. I think that we still tend to have a lot of gendered roles in thrillers. So the woman is the heroine, but she's not the bad guy, So I wanted to do that. And then when you make that choice, I think it's important to be like, okay, well, how did that person get to the place where this seemed like something that made sense to them at the time? Like, I've been long fascinated with cults and how people get drawn into them. And it's not my observation, but I think it's apt. It's just, nobody starts off at day one in a cult like, okay, so you're in a cult and you're going to give up all your personal freedom and you're not going to talk to your family anymore. Like, that's not how it happens, right? And it runs a parallel course with abusive relationships, and it is a form of abuse, but it happens very slowly over time. And that's how people end up in these situations. So when you're on the outside of, an abusive marriage or people in a cult, you're like, obviously, like, why don't you just leave, But because there was a slow erosion of your sense of self and self-confidence and independence and a cutting off from everything around you. And they prey on people who are vulnerable in a moment, and are seeking answers, So I wanted to explore that and sort of show how that could happen, because it does happen much more often than we think, I think. And yeah, I don't need you to like my characters, but I do want you to understand them. So to feel like, yeah, if I was in that situation, that is something that I could choose in the moment, even if you think you wouldn't, you might. And that's the sort of verisimilitude that I'm looking for when I'm writing, is to like, yeah, so you don't have to suspend your disbelief in the same way. And like that book, I did get invited to a women's organization that was pretty fishy. Like that was the germ of the book for me. And I was like, is this a cult? Like, what is this? What is this? And
I
my
love it.
husband was like, well, you're not going. And I'm like, well, maybe I will. It's good, like book research. And he's like, absolutely not. I'm like, well, if I want to go, I'll go. I'm not going to get pulled into a cult. So I didn't go because I didn't, in the end, that left me the freedom to write whatever I imagined was going to happen at this retreat in Idaho, was where I was invited to go. So yeah, these things are happening out there. Right. Um, so yeah, that I think, again, I think there's more of that than we think. And I think taking realistic situations and then obviously amping up the conflict and stakes and tension and all of that, but taking you along the ride. I think part of what also helps the reader access that is because I tend to write in first person. So you really have complete access to the thoughts of the character and you are experiencing what she's experiencing as she's experiencing it without any remove. There's no like, let me tell you about this thing that happened to me 3 years ago, right?
Yeah.
It's happening, it's unfolding in real time. So I think that helps too, to sort of suck you into what she's up to and why.
So you've written other standalone thrillers,
Mm-hmm.
but you've recently turned your hand to some lighter, cozier mysteries. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the reason for that shift and whether you think you'll go back to writing thrillers.
Yeah, I mean, thrillers are a dark space. And I've written, like, depending on how you class, I feel like I wrote 8 books really in that space, 8 or 9 books. And I was finding it heavy, to be honest. Like there weren't a lot of days at the writing desk that were like, oh, this is awesome. Like, there's so many jokes here. And so I was looking just for me to sort of stretch myself as a writer. My first books before I started writing thrillers were comedies. Like I thought I was the next Nick Hornby, but I was a woman, so they called it women's fiction. I wanted to sort of like take my mystery writing skills. Like I think I'm good at creating puzzles and then unraveling them on the page, etc. and twists. And all my books have had twists through my career, whether I was writing mysteries or thrillers or not. And then bring in some of those lighter elements, just like literally for more fun for me. And I had been working on a different idea that just wasn't panning out for whatever reason. And then I got the idea for every time I go on vacation, someone dies. And I was like super excited about it. And it really was just like so much fun to write. And I am working on a thriller. That was something that I've been working on off and on for many years. So maybe it'll see the light of day. I'm having a lot of fun writing this series. And I got a 3-book contract and I'm about to turn in book 3. And we'll see if I'm allowed to write more.
That's excellent. Well, your release, No One Was Supposed to Die at This Wedding, which, by the way, I love this title. And it comes out in May of this year, 2025. We just released an episode where we talked about mysteries set at weddings. Why did you set your story at a wedding? Like, what was your idea behind that?
Well, the whole idea behind that series, so the main character, Eleanor Dash, is a mystery writer with a long running mystery series. And part of the conceit of the series and the fun of it for me is that it's very meta and it sort of skewers different aspects of publishing or in No One's Supposed to Die at This Wedding, books being made into film. And, but also bigger mystery tropes. And so to me, the wedding, like an island wedding trope it's there. And I think it's so rife with potential for mystery because like families. Anytime you're getting a family together, like there's generational stress and ties and anxiety, and then just weddings themselves are so heightened because like there's all this like it has to be the perfect day and all that coming together. And then you're also just getting together a disparate group of people who don't normally hang out together. So I thought it was like a fun environment to explore, all of those tropes together. And just the setup of the novel is that they're making a movie of her best-selling book, and it's the end of filming, and the the actors who are playing the main characters, who are based on her and her ex-boyfriend, have fallen in love and are getting married. And so I like that duality too. I like the idea of having like there's two Eleanors walking around really, and there's two Connor Smiths walking around, and I get to play around with that in the book. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if I've thought it all the way through that there's probably a whole subgenre of mysteries set at weddings. Um, but it's fun to play with tropes because I like to acknowledge the trope and then twist it,
Mm-hmm.
because that's, I think,
Mhm.
what keeps the mystery less predictable for the reader, you know? And I'm not going to say like, oh, no one ever guesses the endings of my books. Like, that's not true. Um, but I think what I do well is that I'm fair with the reader. So you might figure it out, but it's because I've given you enough clues to figure it out, and you're going to figure it out at the end, and you're not going to get all of why. Like there's going to be parts of it where you're like, oh, okay, I didn't get. But now that I go back, if I read this, I understand. So I think it's like it was a fun thing to explore all of those moments that, and people understand that framework too, right? Like, you don't have to explain a
Mm-hmm.
lot with a wedding. It's like people know, okay, rehearsal dinner, like, bachelor party, whatever. Like the elements are all there. Engagement party. People get it. So it's just, it's something that people know, it's familiar, but you're going to bring them in. Like the structure I use for this book is we start in the middle with the discovery of a body and then we go back 2 days in time. So like, you're at the wedding, there's a dead body. How did we get here?
Awesome.
I'm looking forward to reading it. So you've talked about having been a lawyer and then becoming an author. What advice do you have for people who might want to use their career or life experiences and craft mysteries?
I mean, I think you have to be careful. I think that most people's first novels are like semi-autobiographical, I feel. And I have a semi-autobiographical first novel that lives in a drawer, that will never see the light of day. But I'm glad I wrote it because I got myself out of the way, and that opened me up to like write about other things than me. But people do love that specific connection. So if you have like an interesting job that people don't know about, definitely use that. Someone I know is a court reporter. And I was like, you need to write a series of books like with a court reporter because my God, you're like the invisible person in the room and whatever. And she did end up proposing something and she did sell her series. So like, I want my cut, but I'm kidding. But yeah, I think for sure, like we don't need more books with lawyers as the main character, whatever. Like, not that there aren't good and not that I haven't written many. I think what you should always be trying to do is like take your life experiences and then extrapolate them to the made up situation. So, people are always assume that like, especially I think if you're a woman, that you're writing about yourself and it's things that you've gone through. And I'm like, well, I haven't murdered anyone. And like, I've written 20 novels by now. My life is not that interesting. I haven't done any of the things that my main characters have really. But what I have done, what I do is think about analogous situations and how I behaved or people around me behaved or people I saw behave. And then I take those emotions and reactions and put them in the fake people that I made up. So I think lots of people have interesting access to people. And if you can definitely use that regardless of what your job is. Somebody could get murdered in the middle of a podcast, right? Personally, I think that you shouldn't be too wedded to the way things actually happened. I did a writer's conference for a long time where we would read the first 15, 20 pages of people's novels. And a lot of the time, like, it didn't make sense for a book. And they'd be like, well, that's what really happened. And I'm like, right, but you're writing fiction now. So, it's not a memoir. You can change things, and you should, because this doesn't make any sense in a book. Life is very rarely tied up in a neat little bow with like a beginning, middle, and end, and act breaks and all that stuff, right? So I think people take write what you know too literally, and they think it means write about yourself. And I don't think that that's what it should mean. I think it's, write something where you can use your experiences to make it realistic on the page, whatever that means. But you don't have to just write things that you personally have gone through, because like, how would we ever have murder mysteries
Yes.
if that were the case, right? Like, especially in Canada, we don't have that many murderers here, thankfully. So
Yeah, great advice. Great advice. Well, I'm interested, Catherine, in like, are you somebody who plots out your novels ahead of time? Do you discover them as you go along? What's your process like?
I always said I was a pantser. I think I'm like a hybrid, honestly. So I don't do detailed outlines of my books, but I do know the beginning, middle, and I know who did it. I know how they did it. I know why they did it. Especially when you're writing mysteries, I think it's very important to know those things before you start. I mean, so I always use Stephen King as an example of someone who apparently was a complete pantster, but he's just written a mystery and he admitted that he plotted it. I was
I
like,
saw that.
aha!
I saw that too.
I'm like, I knew it, I knew you had to do that. So, yeah. And I think also, you know, does Stephen King write out detailed outlines? No. Does he sit down in front of the page every day and have no idea where he's going? Also, no. Right? I definitely spend a lot of time thinking about the overall plot, who's going to be in the book. And then I start writing to sort of spend the most time in the first third discovering, like, where is this going to be set? Who else is going to be here? What are they going to be like? What's happening, to get me to my first, like, big, twist, reveal, whatever that's going to happen at the end of the first act. And then once I know that, I kind of plot in thirds and I write in thirds. So I tend to like write the first third of the book and then go back to the beginning, and then write through the second third and then go back to the beginning and then write the last third. I've used that process a lot, probably for my last 6, 7 books. Seems to work for me. Keeps forward momentum. I'm always, and I know how it's going to end, so I'm driving towards that end, which definitely helps. And I have notes, I have notes which I sometimes consult and sometimes don't. Sometimes I go back and I'm like, oh yeah, I meant to do that. Oh well. Like, but no, I mean, I know somebody who writes like a 50-page outline. Like, that to me is just a short first draft of a book. Like, I don't know what's that about. But yeah, so that's my process. I'm a big believer in forward momentum. I think a lot of new writers get stuck on the beginning chapters of their books and never move past that, because they're trying to make them perfect. And I think it's like, you need to finish a draft. And once it's finished, then first of all, you know what the book is. And you can go back and you can fix what needs to be fixed. If you never get to the end, it's never going to be done. So,
That's great advice. Um, so, Catherine, can you share where readers can find you?
sure. So I'm very online. If you want to know about me and my books, like, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, my website, Catherine McKenzie author, kind of everywhere. I'm also on TikTok, what I'm doing over there. My political posts go viral, and then men say mean things to me in the comments for like weeks afterwards. And yeah, so I'm kind of everywhere online. It's not hard to find me if you're looking for me. But my books right now are published under Catherine Mack, so Mack. So if you search for me, I think that comes up now. Like, at the beginning, it was a secret, but now I think, people have figured it out. Um, so yeah, that's where you can find me.
We will make sure to put links to all of your spaces in the show notes. Catherine, it has been so much fun to speak with you today and just learn a little bit more about your writing and your writing process. And I am definitely looking forward to your next book.
Thank you. Yeah, it was so fun to talk to you guys. Thanks for having me.
Yes, this has been great. And thank you, listeners, for joining us today on Clued in Mystery. I'm Brooke.
And I'm Sarah, and we both love mystery.
Clued in Mystery is written and produced by Brooke Peterson and Sarah M. Stephen. Music is by Shane Ivers. If you liked what you heard, please consider telling a friend, leaving a review, or subscribing with your favorite podcast listening app. Visit our website at cluedinmystery.com to sign up for our newsletter, The Clued In Chronicle, or to join our paid membership, The Clued In Cartel. We're on social media at Clued In Mystery.